Okay, it's John Vale at V-Speed here. I'm building an old bevel drive Ducati 900 at the moment, and after taking these Dellorto carburettors apart, I found a few mistakes, and seeing as I was putting them back together after they've all been sonically cleaned, had all the bodies and all the parts sonically cleaned, I made this one a while ago, and I've got all the parts laid out for the second carburetor for the same bike here, so I'm going to show you how to put one together correctly, and when it's together I'll try and explain to you how it works and what some of the circuits do, maybe part of that while I'm putting it together. So I'm going to do all this in one hit, so if there's any mistakes I apologise. So we'll see how it goes. And first of all, tools wise, I've got flat bladed screwdriver that fits the jets well, so you don't kind of gouge them, or they're only made of soft brass, so you can mess the slots up pretty easy, and that's a common thing found when you're taking carburetors apart, and it can lead to a scrap carburettor if they're too badly gone to get out with the screwdriver or put in too tight in the first place. You don't have to put any of these jets in tight whatsoever. Just tight, yes, but not really tight. They've only got to be seated and then just pinched up really, and they'll do their job as they were meant to do. So I've already installed with a new gasket, like a new paper gasket like that. It's like a fibre gasket, and that's gone in there first, and then with a 9mm socket it's just been threaded in by the fingers and then just nipped up with a 9mm socket. I've got just a little 1/4" drive ratchet here, so you can put quite a bit of torque on with these if you really try, but it's hard to, and it's a feel thing really. When you've done them a lot, you know how to do them and without damaging them. So now I've put the main fuel feed jet in, I should just put on quickly because it's a very simple bit to do. It's all pretty simple really. This is the clean gauze. It's essentially a fuel filter that goes into the main fuel feed. You just pop that on like so, and then this is the old plastic fuel union that was on there. A bit rubbish, the plastic ones, they go horrible colour, and the new replacements, if you buy a new one, they're cast aluminium or maybe zinc, I'm not sure. So that goes on there essentially, but I'll just get a new gasket for this bolt that secures it. This is all the O-rings and fibre gaskets are from some Dellorto rebuild kits that I had knocking about, and I've just made enough up for 2 carburettors out of all the ones I had. Luckily I've covered all the sizes, so here goes. This is all the simple, quick, bolt together stuff really. Now I'm going to put all of the jets in so they're snugged up and not to be touched again, but stuff like the fuel union, I'm not sure where it's going to sit yet, so I'm just finger tightening that so it's just together, and later on when it's in position I'll fix them. Next, the needle jet needs to go in. They're 265s on these. These are 40mm PHM Dellortos. If I haven't mentioned that already. And they have a 265 for this particular bike. They have a 265 needle jet, and that's in very small writing stamped on it, which I've got a magnifying glass I use for it, because the writing is very small. So that goes in like so, and I'll just use this small screwdriver just to lightly seat it.
Do you know what I mean? Strange. No, because I was a young kid, and I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. Jessica Rabbit, when you go, she was a rabbit as well, wasn't she?
It's gone in the centre main needle slot here. That's just seated but not tight, so I'll use a screwdriver with a right size blade that fits perfectly in the slot without touching the threads that are inside here. You don't want to damage those with a screwdriver that's too big.
That's an amazing statement. You're right. We've got time to do this, pal. We're not going to do it justice now. We've got 2.5 minutes. It's pointless doing that, isn't it? Let's do it, Jessica Rabbit. She wasn't a rabbit. I know she wasn't. I just told you that. That's an amazing sentence.
Right. That's installed. And now, with a 12mm socket, I'll just...
I wanted to talk about Ryan Fraser, which we're talking about.
This just go...
But we're talking about it because there was a survey.
This is on there essentially for the main jet to go in on top of, and then the float bowl is secured with this nut later on when everything's installed onto that thread that screws onto there like so. I need a 12mm socket on there to just pinch this up.
Obviously, where they finished around mid-table, but I can understand to some degree why they would think that, especially with the takeover and it's not happening, it's happening, and they go through the middle every single
season. 12mm used. Don't need that again, I don't think.
Then the people that are buying it supposedly have got a gazillion pounds. Then we start doing shows that are sort of...
Now the jet for the accelerator pump, it's got a small ball in it. I'll explain how the accelerator pump works later,
it's like whenever they hear about the
when the carburettor's more together.
It's not going to happen, do you know what I mean? So I can understand why a little bit. Okay, but let me quickly check
in. So I'll just screw that in with my finger and then just pinch it up with the right size. It's very important, I can't stress enough really, that you use the right size screwdriver for the job like this. So the jets are only made of brass, so you don't want to...
How will he do there? How will he do at Newcastle? I think he'll do well, but my only question is I wonder how much he's hot.
Don't want to slip with it and then gouge the flats for the screwdriver slot, because then they get very difficult to be taken out again, and you can end up with a scrap carburettor body really. So that's the accelerator pump jet in, the one with the small ball in it. We've got the fuel valve jet in, if you like, to call that a jet. And then we've got the needle jet installed, and then the brass fitting that goes kind of in between the main jet, which in this case is a 152 for a 40mm on a 900 Desmo Ducati. When I took these apart, they had three different jet sizes in for two different carburettors, and they should only have... The pilot jets were too big at 65, they should be 60s, and the main jets were different. One was a 148 and one was a 150 and a 148. They should have 152s in both of them. So there's the new main jet of 152 size. Just pinch that up, it only needs a small pinch.
Search Barclays Life Insurance. Barclays, make money work for you. Life insurance is arranged by Barclays Bank UK plc and provided and underwritten by Legal & General Insurance Society.
So that's the main jet installed now.
Exclusions and eligibility criteria apply.
Last season, 11,049
Pilot jet next.
in their dream team. 3,149 picked Danny
60 size.
2.1% of all players picked Nick Pope.
All these you can just
Have been gloating non-stop to their mates
start
ever since.
with your finger,
Football is
really.
back, and so is Dream Team with Betway, the UK's favourite fantasy football game. It's time for you to show your mates that you're the top dog and win a share of the 100k prize pot. Pick your team for free at dreamteamfc.com. Gamble aware.
I'm Alan Partridge, and this is me in audio form. As I speak, globules of molten partridge are seeping into the central of your ear. The thick torrent of my voice
Make sure the
gushes
threads are
through the
clean.
ear to the drum, causing it to vibrate and quiver.
It's brand new, so it should be.
My voice snake and coil around your cochlea, where they settle like a dog in a footwell. Anyway, if you like the thought of me inside your ears, listen to my podcast from the Oast House. Thank you.
The Alan Partridge Podcast, an Audible original. Listen on Audible now.
Excuse me, mate. Can you tell me where I get
Typically this one's being a bit of a nuisance when I'm on video.
Click on to vansdirect.co.uk. A huge choice of new vans, delivered free and fast UK-wide with unbeatable prices. That's vansdirect.co.uk. And get this newly registered 20-plate Vauxhall Combo Sportive from just $155 a month, with free ply-lining delivered in under 7 days. Best deal and fast delivery on your next van? Head for
I might have to hit pause in a sec because there's a small problem with that.
Mainland UK. Ask about the price promise. Deposit 1359. Excludes
I might just have to hit pause and come back to that, but let's have a look.
Or just a yacht big enough to have its own swimming pool. What you need is dream come true money. Luckily tonight,
While we're still on now, I'll show you how to.
that's dream come true money.
I'll come back to that one.
Play online or more. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures.
Idle adjustment,
A nice weekend.
screw.
A nice walk.
They've all been replated, cleaned up, and then replated, so they all look good as new.
Satisfying. You always think
Spring goes on first. When I took these two apart, one of them had the O-rings and the washer installed incorrectly, so the spring goes on first,
you could say you've had more than just a nice.
then the washer,
There's a role waiting for you right now.
and then the O-ring.
Reserves. Find your
Just going to put a bit of oil on the O-ring.
Our number one done and dusted. We've still got loads coming up. We'll be doing our top 5 of 5 duets. We'll be talking about the PFA Player of the Year awards as well. That'd be interesting.
The main difference between the AS and the AD, well, the only difference really, is the carb castings are identical.
He's got no chance with Bergkamp. If you want to be a part of the show, you can. It's very simple.
I believe.
08717023334. Lots coming your way between now and 7.
They're just reversed basically, so
Let's start with the news. Here's Amelia.
the idle adjustment and the mixture screw go in on opposite sides because they sit on different places on the motorcycle, so they can be accessed to work on the bike. So we'll just put a little bit of oil in there.
And they're seeing a change in trends.
We're getting individual cases right across the city, Ledbury area, and the profile is shifting.
What I'm doing is just lightly seating that. I'm not screwing it in at all, really. I'll wait till the bike's together and we're getting towards, when I'm about to get it running, basically, before I'll start adjusting any of these for the moment. As I said, the fuel pipe union, idle, and the mixture I'll put in now as well.
While she was unconscious, Emily Hunt had to fight for a prosecution over 5 years after she was told by prosecutors he hadn't committed a crime.
So again, it's the spring first on both of these that I've just put in. This is the mixture screw, spring first, then the new washer,
The airline has now almost halved its workforce since the beginning of the pandemic, having already axed more
and
than
then
3,000
the
roles
O-ring.
earlier this
It's
year.
very small, so
with Quick Fit. Avoid the MOT Rush and book your MOT today with the UK's #1 MOT tester.
There we go.
Find your nearest centre and book online at quickfit.com.
So it all kind of holds itself together, which is very useful. Dellorto carburettors are a dream to work on, really, so long as they're not put together wrong and the jet's mangled with the wrong screwdriver. But I think you've got that message now.
Will be in his plans for England's 3 games next month. The United captain was dropped for this weekend's Nations League doubleheader.
So I'm just going to start this mixture screw in.
Says he's been in regular contact with his defender. Right the way through, very openly and honestly, and Harry would prefer to be.
So that's seated. I have actually seated that. And just for video purposes, really, I'll back it off 1.5 turns. So
just calm down.
1/2 a turn, 1 turn, 1.5 turns from seated. So that's ballpark figure there for running the bike. So we've got the fuel pipe union, idle adjustment, mixture screw, accelerator pump jet, main jet. Got to check the threads on that just to be sure. Before I hit pause to figure out any problems with the pilot jet, I'll pop in the accelerator pump piston. And when it's together, I'll explain how to pop it together first properly, and then I'll try and explain what it does. I'm actually going to put, I've got a cotton bud here actually that I'm just going to wipe in this part here. It's like a little cylinder, and you've got a piston assembly, if you like, cylinder piston assembly. So I'm just making sure that this cylinder effectively is clean and isn't dry. I mean, it's just come out of the sonic wash, but make sure there's none of that liquid residue left on there, and that the piston is very clean.
Under contract and get on with his job. Because all too often we see footballers down on their tools, and when they don't like something, saying that's it, I'm not doing it.
Bit of oil on there. I've got a new gasket for it here, so that's going to go on onto these little spigots. The gasket goes on first. It goes on to the body, onto the carburettor body face, not behind the gasket and behind this casting. Hopefully that will become apparent as it goes together. Piston goes in like so. That slips in nicely onto the spigots also, so it's in the correct place. Just check the movement. Yeah, that's good. Right now,
Nobody was paying 700 million to get him out of there. I mean, listen, he arguably
it's quite a complex little casting.
It's still way too expensive. 700 million.
That was never even if
We've got
he was 22.
the accelerator pump adjustment screw. I'm being careful here because I have actually set this at what it came off the bike as. And I'm not taking that as gospel, but that is approximately, give or take very little, what it came off the bike as. So that's where that nut is set. So I've got a base setting for it when I put them back together. There's a new little O-ring on there. It's a very small O-ring. So
you can't do that, do you know what I mean? So they're going to have to come to some kind of arrangement, some kind of agreement. He's going to have to get his head back down again, which is weird, and focus, refocus.
Just going to start that into
he's capable of doing.
the casing.
There were stories stories in the paper. Listen, they're only stories. I know that of the fact that not
And
many of
then
his teammates supported him. There was maybe 3 or 4 that wanted him to stay.
sit that on there.
What happens now when he goes back to
And I've got the 3 freshly replated
how
fixing
does he get
screws.
back into life? How difficult is that going to be for him?
I think for him, he's been there his whole life. So I think for him, he just gets on with it. I mean, he's still got all the power. Do you know what I mean? I know they've got the new manager.
So we're just going to lightly seat these now.
And he hasn't. So has he still got that power?
But as an individual, he must understand to himself, like, he must know how good he is as a player. But also, he must be clever enough to know that no one's going to spend 700 million on him. So he would have known that it was practically impossible, especially after this whole free thing during the 10th went out the window. He must have known it was impossible to just walk away. It wasn't going to be possible. But he would just go there.
So that's lightly seated.
And unfortunately, it's just one of them things that we won't see Messi in the Premier League.
Not yet, we won't. Let's find out more.
This is why I need this particular screwdriver, just to pinch these up.
At Barcelona for the near future. Anyway, Andy Brasso, are European football
Little by little, not all at once.
Well, good, very well, thank you. How much of a shock, if at all, is this news to you, firstly, Andy?
Not particularly, especially with what's been going on over the last week or so, because it's been clear that Barcelona don't have the will to compromise, and Messi contractually is not on the firm ground that he thought he was in terms of being able to walk away for free.
They're nice and tight now.
Out there, even with him being the player that he is, who's going to...
With all these small screws, you have to be very careful not to reef on them too much. You've got a new gasket on there, so if that does the job, it should. They don't need to be too tight. So I'm just going to... This is the accelerator pump adjustment screw, as I just mentioned, and I have set it as it came off and verified it against either carburettor. And these actually did have a little bit of cement on from the factory, which they put across the nut and the thread to lock it in place. So that's as it was set from the factory. That was still on there. I've cleaned it off to have them replated, obviously. But I set one of them before they went away and did them individually so I could keep the setting, basically. So I know I'm more or less on the money when it goes back on the motorcycle.
Is there a chance potentially that the club could accept?
So I'm just pinching that up finger tight for the moment because I'm not sure that's the correct setting for it. That gets adjusted later. Right. If you can see in there, I'm not sure you can see, but just there is the piston that I've just installed, which is actuated when it's all together by that little pin. That pushes the piston open, so at the correct time fuel is shot by this jet, and when it's together I'll explain this briefly again. As you're accelerating, as you come off light throttle into something more wide open or approaching that mid-range and basically off idle and into mid-range, it gives it a jet of fuel when it needs it, an accelerator pump, as the name suggests. But when it's all in place, I should be able to explain that a little bit better, hopefully. Hopefully it's not clear as mud.
And then you think, well, this is an opportunity we can't miss. But all of a sudden, you've got to recalibrate everything. And you've got
I'm actually going to put the slide in now. It's all the correct slides. 60/1 on the bottom there. Not sure that'll come into focus.
Are the quotes from Messi? Obviously, he's been speaking to go. I'm going to read a couple out to you, then I'm going to ask you a question at the end of it. So this is Messi talking. He says, I told the club, including the president, I wanted to go. I've been telling
Just a bit of GT85 on there. It's the best stuff. If we look here,
and there came a time when I considered looking for new ambitions. It did not come because of the Champions League result.
there's a ramp inside there, which is where this runs. That sits together like so. So as this, that would be, although I'm holding it upside down as it would sit on the bike,
I think so much of it depends on the downward set.
as you accelerate, that will be pushed up off that ramp. This little, it's like a cam really and a follower.
I think there is room to persuade him, but it just depends who.
As you accelerate, that is pushed out and actuates the piston I pointed out earlier inside there, and gives additional fuel as you're accelerating when it's needed. Ducati states that out of the manual it says when you've got this carburettor assembled
How do they kind of resolve this? Because he's going to go back.
and hooked up to a fuel line,
What's his relationship going to be like between him
that
and the players?
if you
and will we ever see
pump the slide,
or do you think he'll just kind of bide his time until eventually he could
20 times and you have some kind of cylinder, a measured cylinder, after 20 compressions of the slide you should have 5 cubic centimeters of fuel in a measured cylinder, and then you know the accelerator pump is set correctly, and that is set using that screw I just mentioned. If you screw that adjustment in, it lessens the amount of fuel that will be pumped, and if it's unscrewed counterclockwise, then there'll be more fuel. But I'm going to pop the slide in here, and there's a notch on the inside. Oh, the light's not brilliant here. There's a notch just down there that on the opposite side that slots into, so you can't get the slide back to front basically, and it's a guide for the slide as well. Just check the movement, and that's smooth as nothing in there at all. Yeah, it's great. Now the needle, the correct setting for this particular bike is, there's 3 adjustments on the needle. It's the centre adjustment, the centre slot for this clip, and I think it's a K4 needle, which again is the correct one. Yeah, it's a K4 needle and a 256 needle jet, I think. Which again, the jets, some of the jets were the wrong sizes, so I had to check everything. But the needle, people mess about with those jets, but they don't usually touch these. So
if you feel sorry for a player that can't leave the club,
I feel sorry for him in regards to the fact that the amount of time he's invested at Barcelona, what he's done for that football club, he's been absolutely superb. And
so just to show you, actually,
he feels in his own mind that it's come to the end.
The needle is now in there.
100%.
It's
just what he's done for that football club. Do you know what I mean? Every single
he's been paid for it.
I understand that every single season he's delivered. Every single season, goals, assists. I mean, we're talking about him being one of the greatest players ever. So in that regards, I feel like they've made it really hard for him to leave, considering what he's done. But then from the club's perspective, I can fully understand why they don't want to let
slide installed. I'll just pop that down for a second.
Do you expect we'll see him at any stage?
In the Premier League?
Yeah.
I think at the end of this season,
New O-ring for the top
we'll see Lionel Messi
cap.
If that doesn't happen after that,
In fact, I'll just give white.
Messi is staying at Barcelona. That news broke about 12-13 minutes ago, and of course we've covered it here, but you can cover it as well. Simply by picking up the phone and dialing up. How gutted are you? We're not going to see Messi playing in the Premier League for this season at least. 08717 223344.
And now the spring. Do you know what? I've forgotten something. I have actually forgotten something, but I'll come back to that. I'll just pop this. In classic fashion, the expert has
But not as crazy as your hunch. What's your hunch? It's me, the voice inside your head.
Forgotten
that
to
tells you
put a
what's gonna
part
happen
in.
this weekend's games. The one that tells you it's going to be 9.
The spring locates into the circle in the top there, obviously.
One rogue streaker.
I just thought I'd mention
You
it.
get the picture. No matter how complex your hunch is, Betway's Bet Your Way builder lets
I
you
can't
combine
believe
market
I've
data,
forgotten
goal
the
scorers,
spring
corners,
out of
cards,
the
and that's
accelerator
winner is
pump
one bet on one
piston.
match, and you get odds instantly. Heed your hunch with Betway's Bet Your Way builder.
So,
Terms apply. 18 plus.
8mm socket.
This is not just fried chicken. This is a succulent southern fried, whole fry spatchcock chicken with our
Just holding the spring tension down
from M&S.
while I put these
From
new
£7
plated
to just £4
screws in.
Available in store now. This is not just food. This is M&S food. Selected stores until 15th of September. T's and C's apply.
Your first home, or your fifth, you've come a long way to get here. The saving, the scrimping, the surveys. So just take a moment. You've come this far. Make sure your home is protected and bank it with Barclays Home Insurance. And getting a price online could take less than 4 minutes. Search Barclays Home Insurance. Barclays, make money work for you. The insurer of Barclays Home Insurance is Gresham Insurance Company Limited. Terms, conditions, exclusions and eligibility criteria apply.
To the great business names of the UK, like you, Len, and to Handyman Business.
Just pinched up so the new O-ring will seal.
And to have that name
The slide
on
mechanism.
free of charge, plus 4 years free routine servicing. Now that then is very handy. Pick up your business with a brand
A couple of small problems with this, I think.
T's and C's and vehicle restrictions apply. Visit Peugeot.co.uk.
It's not like the crankcases video I did, where it all went together perfectly. There's usually a lot more to go wrong with that.
It's time to bring Asda Prime back to the people. See, Asda are always working hard so we can get a little more and pay a little less. And right now, it's their great big rollback event. Pocket tap time. Save money, live better.
Small problem here as well. It's not the smooth,
Welcome back. Rio, what did you make of the action?
but you always get problems like this with older stuff.
They sub on the Now TV Sky Sports Pass.
Well, they do have Liverpool games on, and Mr. Taylor is a huge red.
I know, but what a huge shame that is going to be.
Let's just see what can be going on here.
And subs on BT Sport.
He obviously has great taste.
Sub all the football on and off every month with flexible BT TV. New recontracting BT Fibre customers. Pay for a month minimum term.
Piston actuates great.
Power steering. Top sport. Amazing, isn't it? How much little extras can mean. Like that
I think I know what's happened.
Get in the cab. It makes your day. Well, here's a
Yeah.
whole lot of extra. For all of September, Seta offering
I think
£1,000 off
the
all
accelerator
SUVs,
pump actuator
including a stylish compact
might have got
Seta
trapped
One.
on the spring
Just
there.
download the voucher from Seta.co.uk and you're good to go. £1,000 off on top of the usual finance offers. Talk about icing on the cake. Say it. Who's brighter?
Register for
Got a
downloadable
small
voucher
problem
online.
here
Orders until 30th of
somehow.
September. Registered by 31st of December 2020. UK 18 plus. Retail sales of new cars at participating dealers only. T's and C's apply.
Spring is being a bit of a problem.
Live. Iceland versus England. Coverage from 2. Kick off at 5 on Talk Sport.
Then make sure you listen to the warm-up tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. on TalkSport. Max Rushton and Charlie Baker will be previewing all the Premier League action and going head-to-head in our very own match and win game, courtesy of Cadbury and its football.
Just having a problem.
Partnership.
The accelerator pump actuator isn't
Searching Cadbury's Match and Win, receiving your match
fitting
day
into the
subscription.
correct slot.
For the weekend's fixtures, giving you a chance to win some incredible prizes.
What's happened to your headphones? What's happened?
It's broken, isn't it?
What's your favourite chocolate?
Cody Wiley, love it.
Penny Lane, you did. I like chocolate finger.
Yeah.
In a minute, we'll speak to Terry Gibson. But your headphones, all right?
Yeah, cool, yeah.
Well, they're broken now. Look at you. We've moved everything about because of the Lionel Messi breaking news. He's now staying at Barcelona. As I said, we'll get Terry Gibson's views on that in just a moment. First, let's get the views of Lisa O'Sullivan. She's watching the US Open for TalkSport.
Yeah, we've got a bit of pressure for Cam Norrie. He was a little disappointing in the first set.
I'm not sure what's happening here at present. Well, I know White's not seating.
Going against him. He is looking to hold serve in the early part of this second set, serving 1-2, but the Spaniard is really ramping up the pressure.
Thanks, Lisa. Sorry, Darren Ben's just taking a picture of my headphones so he can go and buy them. You bought some rubbishy headphones there, haven't you? Surely a grown man giggle for no reason. All right, Terry Gibson. I love Terry Gibson, he's amazing. Gibbo, listen, thanks so much for coming on. Obviously, it's breaking news.
That's it.
We've just phoned you up. Right, we need to get our
Now
best
I've got to
people
do it with the
on
spring in.
TalkSport Drive, and sadly they were all busy, so we phoned you up. I'm only joking.
So it's just
here's
a...
my first
Sorry
question
about the
for you,
silence
right?
there, but
The news that Messi's now staying at Barcelona, is that bigger for La Liga than it is for Barcelona?
Yes, no doubt whatsoever. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, with the departure of Ronaldo and one or two others that have left in recent seasons, it was... I'd be lying if I said it was a little bit of a cloud over this.
just tapping the slide down so it'll release the accelerator pump actuator.
And I think I'm actually glad. I mean, I was intrigued
What's happening?
Maybe coming to the Premier League, but I think Messi and his career, his body of work that he's built up at Barcelona. Personally, I hope he stays there and doesn't play for anyone else.
Listen, he's been superb, as you said there. He's arguably one of the greatest players ever. But do you think this situation is resolvable? Like, will Messi be happy to go?
Just a small problem seating it into the correct slot. It was catching on the spring, or as the slide went up, it was pressing against the actuator, not into the... Now we've got full slide movement. So a small problem there, but rectified now. So the needle is in with the circlip on the second slot. Spring and cap with new O-ring and accelerator pump actuator seated correctly in the slot. One thing I will do while I'm here is I've got a bit of grease here, bit of Silcoline red grease, good quality grease. I'm just going to put just a little on the slide.
It's in an absolute mess at the moment. So you've got a player that is trying to force the president out, and if the president goes, that means the manager will lose his job. So you've now got a manager who's going to have to pick a player, knowing that player would have got him the sack.
So now we've got perfect free movement of the slide with the actuator in the correct place. But what I have neglected to do is fit this spring behind the accelerator pump piston, the return spring. So I'm just going to have to open it up. Just going to back the adjustment piston off a little.
So Terry, I mean, obviously the obvious question to me is, will Messi then sign the contract to sign with someone else in January where he can leave for free? Or can you see in March, because of the new presidency coming in, that he won't really stay?
I've no idea now, I must be honest, Darren. My opinion's changed over the various days that we've had. Lately, the last 2 or 3 days...
So I don't mind leaving any mistakes in, because
you might have to stay.
It's nothing major and it's easily rectified.
So that changes the sort of the climate really as well, doesn't it? If there were supporters in the stadium, maybe one or two might have had the end with Lionel Messi with his attitude.
Do you think so, Terry? Really? Do you think they'd really
I
get
probably should have run over exactly what all the parts were before,
He's not staying because he wants to.
but this spring just goes in there, so it clips onto the back of the piston like so, and then locates onto... I'll just show you, I'll just put my fingers over those screws so they don't fall out onto that.
In general, most supporters would side with Messi.
Spring at receptor, if you like.
I think I'm hopeful that things will change for the better at Barcelona come March. I mean, Xavi as manager, I'm pretty sure Messi might be attracted to the idea of staying with him as
yeah, that's perfect.
We're not going to see him in the Prem, are we, Gibbo?
I don't think so. I think in a year's time he'll be 34 then. I mean, he's still some player, don't get me wrong, but I think the 34, the big investment, you're not going to be getting the best version of Lionel Messi, so it's going to be tough to see him now playing in the Premier League.
Awful. Gibbo, thanks for coming on. Have a good weekend.
Take full responsibility.
Yeah, you should do as well. Thanks, Terry.
Cheers,
There you go, Terry Gibson, our La Liga expert. I've got
I'll
all the
just
quotes here from Leeds and West Ham. I'm going to read them
screw
out.
the
Quite
piston
few.
in again.
Because they're quite incredible, right? Why are you laughing? Because you know that Pat said read them all out, and I went all of them.
Had a few problems with this side actually.
This comes out in paperback next week.
One of
Should we
my
do-
own
should we do-
making.
Should we do one paragraph each? No. I told the club, including.
So
Mate, have you got some music to go underneath it, Ollie? So it sounds like it's, you know.
left we've got the floats, the float pin. Got the pilot jet. I've got to be careful that I don't. I've got to check the threads in there to new jet. I'll try an old one in it. And see, somebody might have damaged that before. It's entirely possible because the jets were wrong, but it wasn't noticeable when they were taken out. So left is the float retaining pin, the throttle cable adjustment. We've got a gasket for the accelerator pump jet and an O-ring for it, the float valve, and we've got a gasket there for the float bolt retaining bolt nut, and the manifold clamp. Oh, I'm just going to pinch these screws up.
I wanted to go and that I was free and the optional year. I was not going to use it and I wanted to go. It was not to make a mess, not to go.
Hope everything's fairly clear on the video. Not sure.
That's page 1 of 2, everyone.
I'm just, it's just really just over finger tight.
It's like nothing happens.
New O-ring in the top there. Just going to pinch these screws up again.
Shouldn't Ben Fletcher be doing this? I mean, that's what he gets paid to do. We're sweating now, man. Nearly there, you're nearly there. I'm not nearly there, look. So what? When they say, when it's written so badly, when they say, I think it's what they say. Right, you can read it then. What they say is that I did not say it before.
And also we've got this little one-way valve, if you like. I believe that's what it is. I'm not absolutely certain, but it's
when the season is over, you decide if you stay or leave.
It's kind of a pressure release valve, I believe, so the piston can return or it can take in a little bit of air, so it equalises the pressure. I think that's what it's for. So that's clean, that's been through the aqua washer, and it has a new O-ring.
I always said I wanted to end it here, and I always said I want to stay here. That I wanted a winning project to win titles with the club, to continue expanding the legend of Barcelona. Last paragraph, everyone. I bet you better get that a standing ovation here or something. Fine.
So it has got a.
And the truth is,
this jet has, or valve has got an O-ring recess right under the crown of it, and that just goes in the top here.
And the club.
Do me a favour. Can you do that again, please?
Thank you.
It's the epic sporting comeback we've all been waiting for. The return of the Premier League. The anticipation and excitement kicks off with the weekend sports breakfast.
Centralise the screwdriver so I don't slip.
Most passionate super supporters for the ultimate pre-season breakfast, featuring the latest news, exclusive interviews, and everything you need ahead of the new competition. The weekend sports breakfast tomorrow morning from 6 on TalkSport with The Sun. Pick up the paper for the latest football news, insight, and gossip. No matter how your team performs this season, you could be a winner with Cadbury's Match and Win promotion. Win a host of exclusive prizes from the nation's top football clubs, including VIP matchday experiences, hundreds of match tickets, and thousands of club shop vouchers.
Right, we're starting to get there now. Slide's good.
To generate a random score prediction matches with a real result that match week, you win. Match and win from Cadbury.
So
Back to play. The most exciting football league in the world.
I'll pop the accelerator pump jet in.
With the official Premier League Adrenaline XL training.
Sorry, I didn't really plan this out before too much. I've just kind of rolled with it. So makes it a bit more real maybe. New O-ring for this accelerator pump jet.
If you buy a new or nearly new car, you can get a free gift. A family day out for 4, a Karcher K2 compact pressure washer, or a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. Which goodie will you choose?
Now inside here,
Box goodies now on at Arnold Clark. Visit arnoldclark.com to find your next car.
A full house in the northeast minutes before kickoff. Your thoughts, Jermaine?
Well, Alex, the sofas at
inside here,
colas are at the ready.
there's a small flat.
All shirtless.
This is
Make
important.
your home the home end, and when your club's new
Inside there,
with special packs of Coca-Cola.
on this jet, there is a small locator flat.
October 2020, T's and C's
It's round apart from one small section which is flatted. And that seats into here. There's another corresponding flat at the bottom here, so you kind of seat the jet in first.
That's a real deal. Find even more real deals at Selco Builders Warehouse and online at selcobw.com. Selco, serving the trade for 120
It helps, of course, if you put the gasket on. New fibre gasket for this accelerator pump jet.
Incidentally, if you were tuned in with the last 74 minutes of that Messi quote, it does come out on audiobook.
And that flat ensures that the hole in the jet that fires down this chamber.
7 o'clock tonight, straight after our kick-off. Don't miss Saturday's session with Dan Windle, Jermaine Beckford and Perry Groves. That's tomorrow afternoon from 1 during the show.
Just trying to get some light in there.
Of the September
Fires down, straight down the throat of the carburettor.
And a reminder, you can hear live Nations League commentary.
I'm just going to put that in finger tight for the moment. Just pinch the gasket up. And like I say, the flat ensures it's facing in the right direction. So,
still to come on Drive. Well, we've got our top 5 of 5 slightly later than advertised. We'll be doing duets.
I shall leave the pilot jet out just for because the threads are a bit suspect and I need to check. And I need to go elsewhere to do that. Before I press pause and end the video, basically, I'll explain roughly how it works. The differences between the 40 AD and the AS is the AS is for the vertical cylinder and the controls are on the left hand side of the casting, the main body casting, and vice versa on the horizontal cylinder as they're on opposing sides of the engine, so you can get to everything. I think I've mentioned that before. So you've got sliding, everything refreshed, actuation's great, new main jet, the accelerator pump, we got the tickler, which basically when the floats are in place, I'll put everything in place so you can see. We've got the float valve which sits in there, which is basically the petrol valve, the on-off switch for the carburettor. It's the float valve there. And this hooks onto the float. So it's hanging there. And then that drops in to that jet. And when it's in place, put the float retraining pin in. Push very lightly on that. That's in. So there we have the floats installed. So basically what happens when the carburettor's together is if you tickle it, basically it pushes down on the float and lets, briefly, for while your finger is depressing that, when the engine's cold and you're starting up, it pushes down the float, so it floods a bit of petrol, a bit too much petrol, in for cold starting. It's just the equivalent of a choke, basically, on an old car. That's how they did it back then. Now it's all different, but that's how the cold starting mechanism on this works. I mean, it has got the casting for Dellorto choke mechanism as well, which screws onto where that flat is, but it's not used on this particular carburettor, but the casting is still there in place. That one, instead of just just flooding the carburettor, basically, that has a lever on top, and you can actually turn the choke on and leave it on, and then it just, through its own mechanism, through these pipes here, will just add more fuel while it's switched on and while the engine's cold. Motor Guzzies tend to use those back 70s, 80s era, but it's on the casting. It's just easier for Dellorto, I guess. So we've got, apart from the pilot jet, we're together now.
Yeah, so that's why I put it in there.
I can't wait for you to hear my choice.
If it's awful, I promise you, right? It's fade it out. But yeah, this is why it's Barbra Streisand, Barry Gibb, 1980, called Guilty. Happy memories for me. That's why I put it in there.
It's good. But it's not.
And
it's
basically, it will look like this. And here is that's the float bowl nut. Float bowl with new seal on, which looks like this. You just work it round the recess in there.
This is your number 5 on best ever duets.
There's one.
Andy.
All jets correctly in place. Pilot jet, which is missing currently from the other one because the threads are suspect. Got to investigate that. Bell mouth, nice shiny new aluminium spun bell mouth, and the manifold clamp in place.
because as a kid growing up, I really liked it, and I know
Just pop the float bowl back on that.
One of those songs that will always stay with me.
So this is your number 5 ever best duets. It's Paul Abdul and Scat Cat.
MC, give me
He's an MC Scat Cat.
Yeah.
Everything just finger tight roughly at the moment, because until it goes on the bike and we're actually looking like it's going to fire up, there's no point.
I've got to think about cartoons today, yeah. Or cartoons that are not cartoons.
Well, thanks ever so much for watching. Sorry if it's not the most brilliant video, but there's no editing and it's just as it happened. So I apologise for any mistakes in that. If it's just a quick installation video of how to build a Dellorto carburettor, and that's, apart from the pilot jet, we're there. So again, thanks for watching, and there'll be other videos on of the final build of the engine in particular, and then the bike in a couple of weeks or so when it's running. Thanks very much. John Vale, V-Speed.